Mom, Marcus said as he prepared to leave. I want you to know that I'm sorry. I know I can never make up for what I did, but I want you to know that I understand now how badly I hurt you. I know you're sorry, Dorothy said, but Marcus, being sorry doesn't fix what you broke. Will you ever forgive me? Marcus asked. I've already forgiven you, Dorothy said. But forgiveness doesn't mean there are no consequences. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending that what you did was acceptable. So what happens now? Marcus asked. Now you learn to take care of your family without depending on me, Dorothy said. Now you learn what it means to be truly independent. And us? Marcus asked. Our relationship will depend on whether you can learn to treat me with respect, Dorothy said. Whether you can learn to see me as your mother who deserves love and consideration, not as a resource to be exploited. Marcus hugged his mother goodbye, understanding that this might be the last time he saw her for a very long time. I love you, Mom, Marcus said. I love you too, Dorothy replied, but love isn't enough. You have to earn back my trust through your actions, not your words. As Marcus and Jessica drove away with their children and their belongings, Dorothy stood in her driveway watching them go. She felt sad about the destruction of their family relationship, but she also felt relief that she was finally free from their manipulation and disrespect. Dorothy walked back into her house, where her name was on the deed, and where she made the rules. For the first time in 3 years, she was truly alone in her own home, and it felt wonderful. The people who had told her she was just a guest had learned what it meant to be actual guests, unwelcome guests who had overstayed their welcome and burned their bridges with their host. Dorothy sat in her living room, looking at the deed to her house that bore her name and her name only. She had been forced to choose between enabling her son's bad behavior and maintaining her respect, and she had chosen self-respect. It had been a painful choice, but it had been the right choice. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is refuse to enable their child's destructive behavior, even when that refusal comes at a high personal cost. Dorothy was finally free to live in her own home as the owner and decision-maker she had always been, and no one would ever again tell her that she was just a guest. In her own house, 6 months after evicting Marcus and Jessica from her home, Dorothy Chen was living a life she had almost forgotten was possible. For the first time in 3 years, she woke up each morning in her own house, made decisions about her own property, and spent her own money without having to justify her choices to anyone. The house felt different now, quieter, more peaceful, but also more authentically hers. Dorothy had redecorated the rooms that Marcus and Jessica had taken over, reclaiming her space and making it reflect her own tastes and preferences rather than accommodating their demands. Mrs. Chen, her neighbor Patricia, said during one of their morning walks, "You seem so much happier lately." "I am happier," Dorothy admitted. "I'm finally living in my own home again, making my own decisions." "Do you miss having your family around?" Patricia asked gently. "I miss the family I thought I had," Dorothy said, "but I don't miss being treated like a guest in my own home. I don't miss having my money stolen or my decisions questioned." Dorothy had indeed found peace in her solitude, but she had also found purpose. The experience with Marcus and Jessica had opened her eyes to how easily elderly people could be taken advantage of by their own family members, and she had decided to do something about it. "I've started volunteering with the Elder Abuse Prevention Coalition," Dorothy told Patricia. "I speak at community centers about financial abuse and property rights." "That must be difficult," Patricia said, "talking about what happened with your son." "It is difficult," Dorothy agreed, "but it's also important. If my story can help one other family avoid what we went through, then maybe something good can come from all this pain." Dorothy had indeed become an advocate for elderly rights. She spoke regularly at senior centers, community colleges, and legal aid clinics, sharing her story and educating other seniors about protecting themselves from financial abuse. "The most important thing to remember," Dorothy would tell her audiences, "is that your property rights don't disappear just because you get older. Your children don't automatically have the right to make decisions about your finances or your living situation. If someone tells you that you're just a guest in your own home, that's a red flag. If someone is using your money without your permission, that's theft, even if they're family members." Dorothy's advocacy work had given her a sense of purpose that she had been missing since William's death. She felt like she was making a difference in other people's lives while also processing her own experience with family betrayal. Meanwhile, Marcus and Jessica were struggling to rebuild their lives. After the consequences of their actions had destroyed their comfortable arrangement, they were living in Jessica's sister's cramped apartment, both working multiple part-time jobs to try to make ends meet while paying restitution to Dorothy. "I got another job," Marcus told Jessica one evening after coming home from his third interview of the week, night shift at a warehouse. "It pays $12 an hour." "That's good," Jessica said, though they both knew that even with multiple jobs, they were barely surviving financially. "How much are we making total now?" Marcus asked. "Between your warehouse job, my retail job, and your weekend landscaping work, we're bringing in about $3,000 a month," Jessica calculated. "And our expenses?" Marcus asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Rent is $800, utilities are about $200. Food for 4 people is at least $600, car payments and insurance are $450, and we owe your mother $500 a month in restitution," Jessica said. "We're spending more than we're making." The reality of their situation was that they were trapped in a cycle of poverty that they had created through their own poor choices. The comfortable lifestyle they had enjoyed while living off Dorothy's resources was gone forever, and they were struggling to survive on their own limited earning capacity. "Maybe we could ask Mom to reduce the restitution payments," Marcus suggested. "After what we did to her?" Jessica asked. "Marcus, your mother has every right to demand full repayment of the money we stole from her." "I know," Marcus said, "but we can't survive like this." "Then we need to find better jobs," Jessica said. "Or more jobs. Or figure out how to live on less money." "How do we live on less money when we're already living in your sister's spare bedroom and eating ramen noodles for dinner?" Marcus asked. Jessica had no answer because they were already living at subsistence level, and there was nowhere left to cut expenses. "Maybe the kids could get part-time jobs," Jessica suggested. "Sophia is 15 and Ryan is 12, Marcus said. "They need to focus on school, not work to support the family because their parents are criminals." The word criminals hung in the air between them, a reminder of what they had become and why they were in this situation. "Do you think we'll ever be able to get our lives back?" Jessica asked. "What lives?" Marcus asked. "The lives we had when we were stealing from my mother. Those weren't really our lives. They were lives we were living with stolen money." Jessica was quiet for a moment, finally confronting the reality that their previous lifestyle had been built on fraud and theft. "So what do we do now?" Jessica asked. "We keep working," Marcus said. "We pay Mom back. We try to teach our kids that actions have consequences and that stealing is wrong, even when you're desperate." "And your relationship with your mother?" Jessica asked. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "I write her letters sometimes, but I don't send them. I don't know if she wants to hear from me." "Maybe you should try," Jessica suggested. "Maybe," Marcus said. "But Jessica, I need to prove that I've changed before I can ask for forgiveness. I need to show her that I can take care of my family without stealing from her." 3 months later, Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He wrote a letter to his mother and actually mailed it. "Dear Mom," the letter began, "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to tell you about what I've learned since we left your house. First, I want to acknowledge that everything you said about us was true. We were stealing from you. We were taking advantage of your generosity. We were treating you with disrespect and trying to control your life. I understand now why you evicted us and pressed charges against us. We deserved every consequence we faced. I also want you to know that we're learning to take care of ourselves. It's hard, and we're struggling financially, but we're not depending on anyone else to solve our problems. I also want you to know that we're learning to take care of ourselves. It's hard, and we're struggling financially, but we're not depending on anyone else to solve our problems. I'm working 3 jobs, and Jessica is working 2 jobs. We're living in a small apartment and we're barely making ends meet, but we're doing it honestly. We're not stealing from anyone or taking advantage of anyone's generosity. I know I can never make up for what I did to you, but I want you to know that I think about it every day. I think about how I made you feel like a guest in your own home, and I'm ashamed of the man I was. I don't expect you to forgive me or to want a relationship with me, but I want you to know that I'm trying to become the kind of man who deserves to be your son. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry for everything." Marcus sealed the letter and mailed it, not knowing if Dorothy would read it or respond to it. 2 weeks later, Marcus received a response that brought tears to his eyes. "Dear Marcus," Dorothy wrote, "I did read your letter, and I appreciate your honesty about what you did and what you're learning. I want you to know that I've never stopped loving you, even though I was deeply hurt by your actions. You will always be my son, regardless of what happened between us. I'm proud to hear that you're working hard to support your family. Honestly, that's what I always hoped you would learn to do. I'm not ready to have a relationship with you yet. The trust that was broken will take time to rebuild, and it will require consistent actions, not just words. But I want you to know that I hope someday we can have a relationship again, a relationship based on mutual respect and honesty. Keep working hard, keep taking care of your family, keep learning from your mistakes, and maybe, in time, we can find our way back to each other. Love, Mom. Marcus read the letter multiple times, feeling hope for the first time since leaving his mother's house. Dorothy hadn't forgiven him yet, but she hadn't given up on him either. Over the next year, Marcus continued to work multiple jobs, pay restitution to his mother, and slowly rebuild his life. He sent Dorothy updates every few months, not asking for anything but simply letting her know about his progress. I got promoted to supervisor at the warehouse, Marcus wrote in one letter. It means more responsibility, but also better pay. Sophia made honor roll this semester, he wrote in another. She's working hard in school, and she understands why we had to move out of your house. I completed a financial literacy course, he wrote in a third letter. I'm learning how to budget and save money properly. I wish I had learned these skills years ago. Dorothy read each letter and felt cautiously optimistic about her son's progress. She could see that he was genuinely trying to change, not just apologizing for getting caught. 2 years after evicting Marcus from her house, Dorothy made a decision that surprised even herself. She called her son and asked if they could meet for coffee. Mom, Marcus said when he answered the phone, shock evident in his voice. Hello, Marcus, Dorothy said. I was wondering if you'd like to meet for coffee sometime. I think we need to talk. I'd like that very much, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. They met at a small cafe near Dorothy's house, both nervous about seeing each other after 2 years of separation. You look good, Dorothy said when she saw Marcus. Tired, but good. Thank you, Marcus said. Mom, I want you to know how grateful I am that you agreed to see me. I've been following your progress through your letters, Dorothy said. I'm proud of the changes you've made. I'm trying to become the man you raised me to be, Marcus said. You're succeeding, Dorothy said. Marcus, I can see that you've learned from your mistakes. You're taking responsibility for your family. You're working honestly, and you're treating people with respect. Does this mean you forgive me? Marcus asked hopefully. I forgave you a long time ago, Dorothy said. But Marcus, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending that what happened was acceptable. I understand, Marcus said. Do you? Dorothy asked. Because I need you to understand that our relationship will never be the same as it was before. You broke my trust in a fundamental way, and while I'm willing to rebuild our relationship, it will be on different terms. What terms? Marcus asked. Terms that acknowledge that I'm an independent adult who makes her own decisions about her life and her property, Dorothy said. Terms that respect my right to live in my own home without interference or manipulation. I understand, Marcus said. Mom, I never want to make you feel like a guest in your own home again. Good, Dorothy said. Because if you ever treat me that way again, you'll lose me permanently. I know, Marcus said. Mom, I want you to know that I understand now what I put you through. I understand how it must have felt to have your own son steal from you and then tell you that you were a guest in your own home. It felt like losing my son, Dorothy said quietly. It felt like the boy I raised had been replaced by a stranger who saw me as a resource to be exploited rather than a person to be loved. I'm sorry, Marcus said, tears in his eyes. I know you are, Dorothy said. And Marcus, I can see that you're not that person anymore. You've learned to take care of yourself and your family honestly. You've learned to treat people with respect. So, where do we go from here? Marcus asked. We take it slowly, Dorothy said. We rebuild our relationship gradually, based on trust and respect. And Marcus, we make sure that your children understand what happened and why, so they can learn from our mistakes. I'd like that, Marcus said. So would I, Dorothy said. As they parted ways that day, both Dorothy and Marcus felt hopeful about the future of their relationship. It would take time to fully rebuild the trust that had been broken, but they had taken the first step toward healing. Dorothy had learned that sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is hold their child accountable for their actions, even when it's painful for everyone involved. and Marcus had learned that respect isn't optional in family relationships, and that taking advantage of someone's love and generosity comes with consequences that can last a lifetime. The woman who had been told she was just a guest in her own home had reclaimed her power and her dignity, while teaching her son valuable lessons about respect, responsibility, and the true meaning of family love. They're going to be educated, Dorothy corrected. They're going to learn that stealing is wrong, even when family members do it. They're going to learn that respect isn't optional, even in family relationships. Marcus left the conversation, understanding that his mother was not going to drop the charges or allow them to continue living in her house. Their comfortable arrangement was over, and they were about to face the reality of supporting themselves without Dorothy's help. The next day, Marcus received a call from the district attorney's office. "Mr. Chen," the prosecutor said, "we'd like to discuss a plea agreement." "What kind of plea agreement?" Marcus asked. "If you plead guilty to the charges and agree to make full restitution to your mother, we'll recommend a sentence of probation instead of jail time." "Full restitution?" Marcus asked. "How much money are we talking about?" "Based on our investigation, you and your wife used approximately $80,000 of your mother's income over the past 3 years, plus the $200,000 loan you fraudulently obtained. Total restitution would be $280,000. Marcus felt like he was going to be sick. $280,000. "We don't have that kind of money." "Then you'll have to figure out how to get it," the prosecutor said. "Mr. Chen, the alternative is a trial where you'll likely be convicted and sentenced to several years in prison." Marcus hung up the phone and told Jessica about the plea agreement. $280,000. Jessica asked. "Marcus, we'll never be able to pay that back." "It's better than going to prison," Marcus said. "Is it?" Jessica asked. "Marcus, we'll be in debt for the rest of our lives. We'll never be able to buy a house, start a business, or build any kind of financial security. We should have thought about that before we stole from my mother," Marcus said. Jessica stared at her husband, finally accepting the full scope of what they had done and what it was going to cost them. "So what do we do?" Jessica asked. "We take the plea agreement," Marcus said. "We admit what we did, we agree to pay Mom back, and we try to rebuild our lives from nothing." "And where do we live while we're doing all this?" Jessica asked. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "Maybe we can find a cheap apartment. Maybe we can move in with your sister temporarily." "Your mother really isn't going to let us stay here?" Jessica asked. "Would you let us stay if we had stolen from you and told you that you were a guest in your own home?" Marcus asked. Jessica had no answer because she knew that Dorothy had every right to evict them and press charges against them. The couple who had told Dorothy she was just a guest were about to learn what it meant to be actual guests, unwelcome guests who had burned their bridges and would soon have nowhere to go. On the day Marcus and Jessica were supposed to move out of Dorothy's house, they were still there, having failed to find anywhere they could afford to live. Dorothy came home from her morning walk to find moving boxes scattered around the living room, but no actual signs of progress toward departure. "Marcus," Dorothy called out, "what's going on here?" Marcus emerged from the kitchen looking defeated and exhausted. "Mom, we need more time." "More time for what?" Dorothy asked. "You've had 30 days to find somewhere to live." "We can't find anywhere we can afford," Jessica said, joining them in the living room. "Every place wants deposits and rent that we don't have." "That's not my problem," Dorothy said firmly. "You were supposed to be out today." "Mom, please," Marcus begged. "Just give us another week. We're working on something." "What are you working on?" Dorothy asked. "Jessica's sister might let us stay with her temporarily," Marcus said. "Might?" Dorothy asked. "You don't even have a definite place to go." "We're trying," Jessica said desperately. "Dorothy, we have children. You can't just throw us out on the street." "I'm not throwing you out on the street," Dorothy said. "I'm evicting you from my house after giving you 30 days' notice. There's a difference." "Where are we supposed to go?" Marcus asked. "That's something you should have figured out before you told me I was a guest in my own home," Dorothy replied. "We apologized for that," Jessica said. "Apologizing doesn't undo the damage," Dorothy said. "Apologizing doesn't give me back the money you stole. Apologizing doesn't restore the trust you destroyed. So there's nothing we can do to make this right," Marcus asked. "You can start by moving out of my house," Dorothy said. "You can start by taking responsibility for your own lives instead of depending on me to solve your problems." "But we don't have anywhere to go," Jessica repeated. Then you should have thought about that before you decided to steal from me, Dorothy said. Their conversation was interrupted by Sophia and Ryan coming home from school. The children looked around at the boxers and the tense atmosphere with confusion and fear. Are we really moving today? Sophia asked. We're working on it, sweetheart, Marcus said. Where are we going to live? Ryan asked. Marcus and Jessica exchanged a look that confirmed what Dorothy had suspected. They had no plan and no place to go. Kids, Dorothy said gently, why don't you go upstairs and pack your personal belongings? Your parents need to figure out their living situation. After the children left, Dorothy turned back to Marcus and Jessica with a stern expression. You have until 6 o'clock tonight to be out of my house, Dorothy said. If you're not gone by, then I'm calling the police to have you removed for trespassing. Trespassing? Marcus asked. Mom, I'm your son. You're my son who stole from me, Dorothy corrected. You're my son who told me I was a guest in my own home. You're my son who tried to take control of my life and my property. We were trying to help, Jessica said, but her words sounded hollow, even to herself. You were trying to help yourselves, Dorothy said, and now you're going to learn what it's like to live without my help. Mom, Marcus said, what if we agree to pay rent? What if we sign a lease and pay you market rate for living here? With what money? Dorothy asked. You don't have jobs that could support market rate rent on a house this size. We'll get better jobs, Marcus said. You'll get jobs that pay enough to support a family of 4 and pay rent on a $400,000 house, Dorothy asked, all while paying back the $280,000 you owe me in restitution. Marcus and Jessica realized that their situation was mathematically impossible. They couldn't afford to live independently, but they had destroyed their relationship with the one person who had been supporting them. Mom, Marcus said, I know we messed up. I know we hurt you, but please don't destroy our family over this. I didn't destroy our family, Dorothy said. You destroyed our family when you decided to steal from me and treat me with disrespect, so there's nothing we can do, Jessica asked. You can learn to take care of yourselves, Dorothy said. You can learn to live within your means. You can learn to treat people with respect, especially the people who help you. And if we do all that, Marcus asked, then maybe, someday, we can have a relationship again, Dorothy said. But Marcus, that relationship will be based on mutual respect, not on you taking advantage of my generosity. What about the kids? Jessica asked. What about Sophia and Ryan's relationship with their grandmother? My grandchildren are welcome to visit me any time, Dorothy said. But they'll be visiting me in my house, where I make the rules and where I'm treated with respect. So you're choosing the house over your family? Marcus asked. I'm choosing self-respect over enabling your bad behavior, Dorothy corrected. Marcus, you told me I was a guest in my own home. You stole my money. You tried to control my life. Did you really think there would be no consequences for that? Marcus had no answer because he was finally beginning to understand that his actions had consequences that couldn't be undone with apologies. At 5:30 that evening, Marcus and Jessica loaded their belongings into a rented truck, having finally accepted that Dorothy was serious about evicting them. They had managed to arrange temporary housing with Jessica's sister, but it was a small apartment that would be crowded with 6 people. You'll get jobs that pay enough to support a family of 4, pay rent somewhere else, and pay me back for the money you stole, Dorothy asked, all while facing criminal charges for fraud. Marcus and Jessica had no answer because they knew their situation was hopeless. Mom, Marcus said, I'm sorry. I know we hurt you. I know we were wrong, but please don't destroy our family over this. I didn't destroy our family, Dorothy said. You destroyed our family when you decided to steal from me and then tell me I was a guest in my own home. We never meant to hurt you, Jessica said. But you did hurt me, Dorothy replied. You made me feel like a burden in my own home. You made me question my own competence and independence. You stole my money and my dignity. We were trying to help, Marcus said weakly. You were trying to help yourselves, Dorothy corrected. And now you're going to face the consequences of your actions. What consequences? Jessica asked, though she dreaded the answer. The consequences of committing fraud against a family member, Dorothy said. The consequences of elder financial abuse. The consequences of treating someone who loved you with disrespect and contempt. Dorothy walked toward the stairs, then turned back to face Marcus and Jessica. You have 27 days left to find somewhere else to live, Dorothy said. I suggest you start looking. Mom, please, Marcus called after her. But Dorothy was already walking upstairs. Marcus and Jessica sat in the living room of the house they had thought they controlled, finally understanding that they had never had any power at all. They had been living in Dorothy's house, using Dorothy's money, and depending on Dorothy's generosity, while convincing themselves that they were doing her a favor. Now they were about to learn what life was like without Dorothy's support, and they were beginning to realize that they were completely unprepared for independence. The woman they had called just a guest was about to show them what it meant to be actual guests, unwelcome guests who had overstayed their welcome and would soon be asked to leave permanently. 2 weeks after Dorothy filed criminal charges against Marcus and Jessica, they were discovering just how unprepared they were for independent living. Every apartment they looked at required first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit money they simply didn't have after 3 years of living off Dorothy's income. This apartment requires $5,000 up front, Jessica said, looking at yet another rental listing on her phone. Where are we supposed to get $5,000? I don't know, Marcus said, slumped on the couch in what was still technically his mother's living room. Maybe we could ask for a loan. From who? Jessica asked. Your mother is pressing criminal charges against us. My parents don't have that kind of money. Our credit cards are maxed out from trying to maintain a lifestyle we couldn't afford. Marcus was beginning to understand that they had been living in a fantasy, using his mother's resources to maintain the illusion that they were successful, independent adults. Maybe we could ask Mom to drop the charges, Marcus suggested. In exchange for what? Jessica asked. She wants us out of her house. She wants us to stop using her money. What do we have to offer her? An apology, Marcus said weakly. Marcus, we already apologized, Jessica said. She doesn't care about our apologies. She wants justice. Their conversation was interrupted by Sophia coming home from school with a confused and upset expression. Dad, Sophia said, why are kids at school saying you and Mom are going to jail? Marcus felt his heart sink. Sweetheart, there's been a misunderstanding with Grandma. We're working it out. What kind of misunderstanding? Sophia asked. She was 14 and smart enough to understand that something serious was happening. Some financial issues, Marcus said vaguely. Did you steal money from Grandma? Sophia asked directly. Marcus couldn't bring himself to lie to his daughter. We made some financial decisions that Grandma didn't approve of. You mean you stole from her? Sophia said, her voice flat. It's complicated, Jessica said. No, it's not, Sophia said. Either you took money that wasn't yours, or you didn't. Marcus looked at his daughter, his intelligent, perceptive daughter, who had always looked up to him, and realized he couldn't hide the truth from her anymore. We used Grandma's money in ways we shouldn't have, Marcus admitted. And now she's kicking us out, Sophia asked. We're looking for our own place, Jessica said, trying to put a positive spin on the situation. Because Grandma doesn't want us here anymore, Sophia said. Because it's time for us to be independent, Marcus said. We were independent before we moved in with Grandma, Sophia pointed out. Why can't we be independent now? Marcus had no answer, because the truth was that they had never been truly independent. They had been struggling financially when they moved in with Dorothy, and 3 years of living off her resources had only made them less capable of supporting themselves. That evening, Dorothy came home to find Marcus waiting for her in the kitchen. Mom, Marcus said, we need to talk about the criminal charges. What about them? Dorothy asked, pouring herself a glass of water. I want you to know that I understand why you filed them, Marcus said. I understand that what we did was wrong. Do you? Dorothy asked. Because 2 weeks ago, you told me I was a guest in my own home. I was wrong, Marcus said. Mom, I was completely wrong. I don't know what I was thinking. You were thinking that you could take control of my life and my property, Dorothy said. You were thinking that I was too old and too weak to stop you. That's not what I was thinking, Marcus protested. Isn't it? Dorothy asked. Marcus, you took out a loan against my house without my permission. You used my income to pay for it. You told me I was here at your discretion. What else could you have been thinking? Marcus struggled to find words that would make his behavior seem less awful than it had been. I was thinking about the family, Marcus said. I was thinking about keeping us all together. You were thinking about keeping yourself comfortable, Dorothy corrected. You were thinking about avoiding the responsibility of supporting your own family. That's not fair, Marcus said. Fair? Dorothy asked. Marcus, what's fair about stealing from your mother? What's fair about telling her she's a guest in her own home? Marcus had no answer because he was finally beginning to understand how his actions must have looked from his mother's perspective. Mom, Marcus said, what do you want from us? I want you to take responsibility for your actions, Dorothy said. I want you to stop making excuses and start acknowledging what you did. I am acknowledging it, Marcus said. I'm admitting that we were wrong. Are you? Dorothy asked. Marcus, are you admitting that you committed fraud? Are you admitting that you stole from me? Are you admitting that you tried to take control of my life and my property? Marcus hesitated because admitting those things felt like confessing to crimes. I'm admitting that we made mistakes, Marcus said carefully. Mistakes? Dorothy asked. Marcus, fraud isn't a mistake. Theft isn't a mistake. Telling your mother she's a guest in her own home isn't a mistake. What do you want me to say? Marcus asked desperately. I want you to tell the truth, Dorothy said. I want you to admit that you committed crimes against me. I want you to acknowledge that you betrayed my trust and violated my rights. And if I do that, Marcus asked, then maybe we can start to rebuild our relationship, Dorothy said. But Marcus, rebuilding our relationship doesn't mean dropping the criminal charges. It doesn't mean letting you continue to live here rent-free. It doesn't mean pretending that what you did was acceptable. Marcus felt tears welling up in his eyes. Mom, I don't want to go to jail. Then you should have thought about that before you decided to commit crimes, Dorothy said. But what about the kids? Marcus asked. What about Sophia and Ryan? What about them? Dorothy asked. Marcus, your children are going to learn an important lesson about actions and consequences. They're going to learn that even parents have to follow the law. They're going to be traumatized, Marcus said. How? Dorothy asked. How are you going to fix the fact that you fraudulently obtained a $200,000 loan against my property? We'll pay it back, Jessica said desperately. With what money? Dorothy asked. You don't have jobs that could support a loan that size. You've been living off my income for 3 years. We'll get better jobs, Marcus said. In 30 days, Dorothy asked. You're going to get jobs that pay enough to support a family of 4 and make payments on a $200,000 loan in 30 days. Marcus and Jessica realized that their situation was hopeless. Mom, Marcus said, I'm your son. You can't just throw us out on the street. You're my son who told me I was a guest in my own home, Dorothy replied. You're my son who stole from me. You're my son who tried to take control of my life and my property. We were trying to help you, Jessica said, but her voice lacked conviction. You were trying to help yourselves, Dorothy corrected. And now, you're going to learn what it's like to live without my help. Dorothy picked up the deed to her house and held it up for Marcus and Jessica to see. This document says that Dorothy Chen is the sole owner of this property, Dorothy said. Not Marcus Chen, not Jessica Chen. Dorothy Chen, me. We know you own the house, Marcus said. Then start acting like it, Dorothy said. Start treating me with the respect that a homeowner deserves. Start acknowledging that you are living here as my guests, not as my landlords. But the loan, Jessica said weakly. The loan that you fraudulently obtained will be dealt with through proper legal channels, Dorothy said. I'm contacting my attorney this morning to discuss my options. Your attorney? Marcus asked, fear evident in his voice. Yes, my attorney, Dorothy said. The one who will help me understand my rights when family members commit fraud against me. Marcus and Jessica sat in stunned silence as the full implications of their situation began to sink in. Mom, Marcus said finally, what do you want us to do? I want you to pack your belongings and find somewhere else to live, Dorothy said. I want you to stop using my income to pay for loans I didn't authorize. And I want you to start treating me like the homeowner I am, not like a burden you're graciously tolerating. And if we do all that, Jessica asked, then maybe we can discuss the possibility of you staying here under terms that I set, Dorothy said. Terms that acknowledge that this is my house and that you are here as my guests. What kind of terms? Marcus asked. Terms that include paying rent, Dorothy said. Terms that include respecting my authority in my own home. Terms that include acknowledging that you have no right to make decisions about my property without my explicit consent. Marcus and Jessica looked at each other, finally understanding that their comfortable arrangement was over, and that they would have to start treating Dorothy with the respect she deserved. The woman they had called just a guest was about to show them what real power looked like. 3 days after Dorothy's ultimatum, Marcus and Jessica were discovering that their mother's threat to involve lawyers wasn't an empty gesture. Dorothy had spent the morning at the law office of Patricia Williams, attorney who specialized in elder financial abuse and property fraud. Mrs. Chen, Attorney Williams said as she reviewed the documents Dorothy had brought, "What your son did constitutes several serious crimes." "What kind of crimes?" Dorothy asked, though she suspected she already knew. "Fraud, identity theft, elder financial abuse, and possibly money laundering," Williams explained. "Using a medical power of attorney to obtain a financial loan is fraud. Using your income without your consent to pay for that loan is theft." "What are my options?" Dorothy asked. "You have several options," Williams said. "You can file criminal charges against your son and daughter-in-law. You can demand immediate repayment of all funds they've taken from you. You can force the sale of any assets they purchased with your money, and you can evict them from your property." "What about the loan they took out against my house?" Dorothy asked. "That's where things get complicated," Williams said. "The bank made an error in accepting invalid documentation, but the loan is still legally binding against your property. So I'm responsible for a loan I never authorized?" Dorothy asked. "Unfortunately, yes," Williams said. "However, you can sue your son and daughter-in-law for the full amount of the loan, plus damages. You can also file a complaint against the bank for their negligence in accepting invalid documentation." Dorothy felt overwhelmed by the legal complexities of her situation, but she was determined to hold Marcus and Jessica accountable for their actions. "I want to file criminal charges," Dorothy said firmly. "Are you sure?" Williams asked. "Mrs. Chen, if you file criminal charges against your son, he will likely go to prison. This will destroy your family relationships permanently." "My son destroyed our family relationship when he told me I was a guest in my own home," Dorothy replied. "When he stole from me, when he tried to take control of my life and my property." "I understand," Williams said. "Let me prepare the necessary paperwork." While Dorothy was meeting with her attorney, Marcus and Jessica were at home trying to figure out how to salvage their situation. "We need to apologize," Marcus said. "We need to make Mom understand that we were just trying to help." "Apologize for what?" Jessica asked. "For taking care of her house, for paying the bills, for managing the household, for taking out a loan without her permission," Marcus said. "For using her money to pay for it, for telling her she was a guest in her own home." "We never said she was a guest," Jessica protested. Double quotes. "Yes, we did," Marcus said. "Jessica, we told her she was here at our discretion. We told her we were in charge. We told her she needed to understand her position." Jessica was quiet for a moment, finally beginning to understand how their words must have sounded to Dorothy. "Maybe we were a little harsh," Jessica admitted. "A little harsh?" Marcus asked. "Jessica, we essentially told my mother that we had taken over her house and that she was lucky we were letting her stay. But we have been taking care of everything," Jessica said defensively. "With her money," Marcus pointed out. "We've been using her Social Security and pension to pay for everything, including the loan we took out without her permission. We've been managing the household finances," Jessica said. "We've been stealing from her," Marcus said bluntly. Jessica stared at her husband, finally confronting the reality of what they had been doing. "So, what do we do now?" Jessica asked. "We apologize," Marcus said. "We admit we were wrong. We ask for her forgiveness. And if she doesn't forgive us," Jessica asked, "then we pack our things and find somewhere else to live," Marcus said. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Marcus opened it to find a police officer holding an official-looking document. "Marcus Chen?" the officer asked. "Yes," Marcus replied, his heart sinking. "You're being served with a criminal complaint for fraud and elder financial abuse," the officer said, handing Marcus the papers. Marcus read the document with growing horror. His mother had filed criminal charges against him, and Jessica. "Jessica," Marcus called, his voice shaking. "You need to see this." Jessica read the criminal complaint and felt her world crumble. "She's really doing this. She's really having us arrested." "We're not arrested yet," Marcus said. "But we will be if we don't do something." "Like what?" Jessica asked. "Like hire a lawyer," Marcus said. "Like figure out how to make this right." "With what money?" Jessica demanded. "Marcus, we don't have money for a lawyer. We've been living off your mother's income for 3 years." Marcus realized that Jessica was right. They had no savings, no assets, and no way to pay for legal representation. "Maybe we can get a public defender," Marcus suggested. Public defenders are for people who can't afford lawyers, Jessica said. We live in a $400,000 house. We live in my mother's $400,000 house, Marcus corrected. We don't own anything. The reality of their situation was finally sinking in. They had been living a lifestyle they couldn't afford, using Dorothy's money and property to maintain the illusion of success. That evening, Dorothy returned home to find Marcus and Jessica waiting for her in the living room. Mom, Marcus said, as soon as she walked in, we need to talk. I think we've talked enough, Dorothy said calmly. Mom, please, Marcus begged. We know we made mistakes. We want to make this right. How? Dorothy asked. How are you going to make right the fact that you stole from me? How are you going to make right the fact that you told me I was a guest in my own home? We'll pay you back, Jessica said desperately. With what money? Dorothy asked. You don't have jobs that could support the lifestyle you've been living. You've been using my money to pay for everything. We'll get better jobs, Marcus said. I think I need some air, Dorothy said, walking toward the back door. Mom, where are you going? Marcus called after her. To my garden, Dorothy said. In my backyard, of my house. Our house, Jessica corrected under her breath, but loud enough for Dorothy to hear. Dorothy walked into her garden. The garden she had planted and tended for 25 years, and tried to process what had just happened. Her son had essentially told her that she was a guest in her own home, that she was there at their discretion, and that they were now in charge of her life. But what Marcus and Jessica didn't know was that Dorothy had a secret that would shatter their comfortable assumptions about who really controlled the house, a secret that would teach them the most expensive lesson of their lives about respect, property rights, and the consequences of taking family for granted. Dorothy walked back into the house with a calm determination that surprised even herself. Marcus, Jessica, Dorothy said, I think it's time we had a conversation about who really owns this house. We just had that conversation, Jessica said dismissively. No, Dorothy said with a smile that made both Marcus and Jessica uncomfortable. We really didn't. Dorothy walked to her bedroom and returned with a folder that would change everything. The next morning, Dorothy woke up with the clarity she hadn't felt in months. The conversation from the previous evening had been a wake-up call that forced her to confront the reality of what her son and daughter-in-law had been doing to her. But more importantly, it had reminded her of something crucial that Marcus and Jessica had apparently forgotten. Dorothy made herself a cup of coffee and sat at her kitchen table, the same table where she had been told she was just a guest. In her own home, she opened the folder she had retrieved the night before and spread out the documents that would soon turn Marcus and Jessica's world upside down. The first document was the original deed to the house, showing that Dorothy Chen was the sole owner of the property. The second document was her will, which she had updated just 6 months ago. The third document was the power of attorney that Marcus claimed gave him authority over her finances, a document that Dorothy now realized she needed to examine very carefully. Good morning, Dorothy, Jessica said as she entered the kitchen, already dressed for her part-time job at a local boutique. You're up early. Good morning, Jessica, Dorothy replied calmly. We need to talk. About what? Jessica asked, pouring herself coffee. About the conversation we had last night, Dorothy said. About my status in this house. Jessica sighed dramatically. Dorothy, I thought we settled that. You need to accept that things have changed around here. Oh, things have definitely changed, Dorothy agreed, but not in the way you think. Marcus entered the kitchen, looking tired and stressed. Morning, Mom. Morning, Jess. Marcus, Dorothy said. I'm glad you're here. I want to show you both something. Dorothy picked up the first document from the table. This is the deed to this house. Mom, we don't need to see the deed, Marcus said dismissively. We know you own the house. Do you? Dorothy asked. Because last night, you told me I was just a guest here. That's not what we meant, Marcus said, though his tone suggested otherwise. Then what did you mean? Dorothy asked. Jessica sat down at the table with an exasperated expression. Dorothy, we meant that in practical terms, we're the ones running this household. I see, Dorothy said. And this loan you took out against my property, the one you claim gives you the right to make decisions about my house. Let me ask you something about that. What? Marcus asked warily. How exactly did you get approval for a $200,000 home equity loan? Dorothy asked. I told you, I have power of attorney, Marcus said. Dorothy picked up the power of attorney document. This power of attorney, yes, Marcus said. The one that specifically states it's for medical decisions only? Dorothy asked, reading from the document. Marcus's face went pale. What? This power of attorney, Dorothy continued reading, grants you the authority to make medical decisions on my behalf in the event that I'm incapacitated. It explicitly excludes financial decisions. That can't be right, Jessica said, grabbing the document from Dorothy's hands. Jessica read the document frantically, her face growing whiter by the second. Marcus, this doesn't give you authority over financial matters, but the bank accepted it, Marcus said weakly. The bank made a mistake, Dorothy said. A very expensive mistake that you're about to pay for. What do you mean? Jessica asked, though she was beginning to understand the implications. I mean that you obtained a loan against my property using fraudulent documentation, Dorothy said calmly. That's a federal crime. Marcus sat down heavily in his chair. Mom, I didn't know it was fraudulent. I thought I had the authority. Did you read the document before you used it? Dorothy asked. Doc Marcus couldn't answer because they all knew he hadn't. So let me understand the situation, Dorothy continued. You took out a loan against my house using documentation that didn't give you the authority to do so. You've been making payments on this loan for a year, presumably using money you claim to be contributing to the household. We've been paying the loan payments. Yes, Jessica said defensively. With what money? Dorothy asked. Marcus, you've been unemployed for most of the time you've lived here. Jessica, you work part-time at a boutique. Where did you get the money to make payments on a $200,000 loan? Marcus and Jessica exchanged a look that confirmed Dorothy's worst suspicions. You've been using my Social Security and pension payments, haven't you? Dorothy asked. We've been managing the household finances, Marcus said evasively. You've been stealing my income to pay for a loan you had no right to take out in the first place, Dorothy said, her voice rising. It's not stealing, Jessica protested. We've been taking care of you and the house. Taking care of me? Dorothy asked. By mortgaging my house without my permission and then using my own money to pay for it. Mom, we were trying to help, Marcus said desperately. Help who? Dorothy demanded. Help yourselves to my property and my income. Dorothy stood up and walked to the kitchen window, looking out at the garden she had tended for 25 years. When she turned back to face Marcus and Jessica, her expression was cold and determined. I want you both to understand something, Dorothy said. This is my house. My name is on the deed. My name only. We know that, Jessica said. Do you? Dorothy asked. Because last night, you told me I was a guest here. You told me you were in charge. You told me I was here at your discretion. We were just trying to establish some order, Marcus said. Well, let me establish some order for you, Dorothy said. This is my house. I am not a guest here. You are guests here. And guests who disrespect their hosts and steal from them are no longer welcome. What are you saying? Jessica asked, though she was beginning to understand. I'm saying that you have 30 days to find somewhere else to live, Dorothy said calmly. 30 days, Marcus asked, shocked. Mom, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious, Dorothy said. You told me I was just a guest in my own home. Well, now you're going to learn what it's like to actually be guests. Guests who have overstayed their welcome. But where will we go? Jessica asked, panic creeping into her voice. That's not my problem, Dorothy said. You're adults. You can figure it out. Mom, what about the kids? Marcus asked. What about Sophia and Ryan? What about them? Dorothy asked. You should have thought about your children before you decided to steal from their grandmother. We didn't steal anything, Jessica protested. You took out a loan against my house without my permission, Dorothy said. You've been using my income to pay for it. You've been telling me that I'm a guest in my own home. What would you call that? Marcus and Jessica had no answer because they were finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what they had done. Mom, Marcus said, please, we can work this out. We can fix this. What would you do if your own son told you that you were just a guest in your own home? Well, what happened next will absolutely blow your mind and leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about family respect and property rights. If you enjoy family drama stories that will shock you to your core, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any episodes. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that will leave you absolutely speechless. A story about a mother who was disrespected in the most unimaginable way, and how she delivered the most devastating reality check her son never saw coming. This story begins with Mrs. Dorothy Chen. a 60-year-old widow who has been living what she thought was a peaceful life in her beautiful four-bedroom home in Sacramento, California. Dorothy lost her husband William 3 years ago to a heart attack, and since then, she's been sharing her home with her son Marcus and his family, believing she was helping them during difficult financial times. Marcus, now 35 years old, moved in with his mother after losing his job during the economic downturn. He's married to Jessica, a woman with expensive tastes and a sharp tongue that could cut glass. They have 2 children, Sophia, age 14, and Ryan, age 11. What started as a temporary arrangement to help Marcus get back on his feet has stretched into 3 years of what Dorothy thought was a loving, multi-generational household. But Dorothy was about to discover that her son and daughter-in-law had a very different perspective on their living arrangement. "Mom," Marcus said during what Dorothy thought was going to be a pleasant family dinner, "Jessica and I need to discuss some changes around here." Dorothy looked up from her plate, immediately sensing tension in her son's voice. "What kind of changes, sweetheart?" "Well," Marcus continued, avoiding eye contact with his mother, "we've been thinking that since we're the ones really running this household now, we need to establish some ground rules." Dorothy felt a chill run down her spine. "Ground rules? What do you mean?" Jessica leaned forward with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dorothy, we appreciate everything you've done for us, but we think it's time to clarify everyone's role in this house." "My role?" Dorothy asked, confusion evident in her voice. "This is my home. What role needs clarifying?" "That's exactly what we need to talk about," Marcus said, finally looking at his mother. "Mom, you need to understand that things have changed. Jessica and I are the ones paying the bills now. We're the ones maintaining the house. We're the ones making the decisions." Dorothy felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. "Marcus, I pay my share of the utilities. I buy groceries. I help with the children. And we appreciate that," Jessica said, with false sweetness. "But you need to understand that this isn't really your house anymore. Not in any practical sense." "What do you mean it's not my house?" Dorothy asked, her voice rising slightly. "Mom," Marcus said, his patience clearly wearing thin, "you're 70 years old. You can't take care of this place by yourself. Without us here, you'd be lost." "I'm 68, not 70, Dorothy corrected. "And I was taking care of this house just fine before you moved in, were you?" Jessica asked, with a condescending tone. "Because, from what I remember, you were struggling with the maintenance, the yard work, the repairs. We've been taking care of everything." Dorothy felt hurt and confused. It was true that Marcus and Jessica had helped with some household tasks, but she had never asked them to take over. She had assumed they were contributing because they were living there rent-free. "I never asked you to take over my house," Dorothy said quietly. "You didn't have to ask," Marcus said. "We saw what needed to be done, and we did it. Mom, you should be grateful. We're here to help you." "Grateful," Dorothy repeated, feeling a surge of anger. "Marcus, I should be grateful that you're living in my house without paying rent." "Without paying rent?" Jessica laughed harshly. "Dorothy, we pay the mortgage, the utilities, the insurance, the property taxes. We pay for everything." Dorothy felt confused. "What mortgage? I paid off this house 15 years ago." Marcus and Jessica exchanged a look that made Dorothy's stomach turn. "Mom," Marcus said carefully, "we took out a home equity loan last year to pay for some necessary repairs and improvements." "You took out a loan on my house?" Dorothy asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We had to," Jessica said defensively. "The roof needed work, the plumbing was old, the electrical system needed updating. You couldn't afford those repairs on your pension." "I never agreed to any loan," Dorothy said, feeling panic rising in her chest. "Mom, I have power of attorney," Marcus said. "I was authorized to make financial decisions for you." Dorothy felt like she was in a nightmare. Power of attorney for medical decisions, not financial ones. "It's a general power of attorney," Marcus said. "I can make any decisions necessary for your welfare." Dorothy realized with growing horror that her son had been making financial decisions about her property without her knowledge or consent. "How much is this loan?" Dorothy asked. "That's not important," Jessica said quickly. "What's important is that we're the ones making the payments now." "How much?" Dorothy demanded. Marcus looked uncomfortable. $200,000. Dorothy felt like she couldn't breathe. $200,000. "Marcus, this house is only worth about $400,000. It's worth more than that now, with all the improvements we've made," Jessica said. "Improvements I never asked for." Dorothy said, her voice shaking with anger. Mom, you need to calm down, Marcus said. We did what was necessary to maintain the property value. You mortgaged my house without my permission, Dorothy said, standing up from the dinner table. We did what was best for everyone, Jessica said. Dorothy, you need to understand your position here. My position? Dorothy asked. Yes, Marcus said, his voice taking on a harder edge. Mom, you need to understand that you're essentially a guest in this house now. We're the ones responsible for it. We're the ones who make the decisions. The words hit Dorothy like a physical blow. A guest, in my own home. In practical terms, yes, Jessica said. We're the ones who pay the bills, maintain the property, and take care of everything. You're here because we allow you to be here. Because you allow me, Dorothy repeated, her voice rising. Mom, don't get upset, Marcus said. We're not kicking you out. We're just clarifying the hierarchy here. The hierarchy? Dorothy asked incredulously. Yes, Jessica said firmly. We're the heads of this household now. You're a dependent who lives here, at our discretion. Dorothy looked at her son, the boy she had raised, the man she had welcomed into her home when he needed help, and saw a stranger. So let me understand this, Dorothy said slowly. You moved into my house when you lost your job. You've been living here rent-free for 3 years. You took out a loan against my property without my permission, and now you're telling me that I'm a guest in my own home. You're not a guest, Marcus said. You're family. But you need to understand that we're in charge now. In charge of what? Dorothy demanded. In charge of this household, Jessica said. In charge of the decisions that affect this property and everyone who lives in it. Dorothy felt tears of rage and betrayal welling up in her eyes. I can't believe what I'm hearing. Mom, you need to accept reality, Marcus said. You're getting older. You can't handle the responsibilities of homeownership anymore. We're here to take care of you and the house. I don't need you to take care of me, Dorothy said firmly. Yes, you do, Jessica said. Dorothy, without us, you'd lose this house. You can't afford the maintenance, the taxes, the insurance on your own. I was managing just fine before you moved in, Dorothy said. No, you weren't, Marcus said. Mom, you were struggling, and you were too proud to admit it. Dorothy stared at her son and daughter-in-law, finally understanding that they had taken control of her life and her property while convincing themselves that they were doing her a favor.